Okay, so we're up for something a little odd here. This is a two-player card game, Caesar and Cleopatra. I'm going to briefly go over the rules, in part to remind myself of them, and then try to treat this as I would others. I've done a two-player card game before, right, with Railroad Barons. Okay. It's kind of an interesting game, from what I can see, and I wanted to give it a shot. Unfortunately, it's more of just a plain old card game with very little link to the theme. There's just things that do things that are named things and whatever. But the goal is to get these Roman patricians, and they're in different classes. Doesn't seem to be any terrible historical reason for selecting the numbers. There's 5 senators, 5 praetors, 5 quaestors, 3 censors, and 3 aediles. They're worth points themselves. Controlling the majority of any group is worth points. You also get points based on these cards. Each player, and there's only 2, will get one of these cards, which gives them a set of 3 of one type that if they collect, they get 2 extra points for. So I think that's most of the goal right there, right? Is there anything else? Each card is worth 1. The majority in a group is worth 1. The entirety of the group is worth another 1. And then 2 victory points for achieving your special card. And each person gets one of these at random, and then the rest are hidden. So what about the game itself? Well, we see part of the setup here. It's with these different patricians here. There's a stack of vote of confidence cards, which for the most part name one of these classes. There's a couple orgies in there too. You know, it's a 2-player game. You can pretend you're having an orgy at least. You don't have enough people to really have one. Anyway, so let's see what we got. For the actual play of the game, after you select your influence cards, you'll be getting a set of 10 cards, numbered 1 through 5, and these are your influence cards. The points are how much influence you're putting on a particular group. As far as I can tell, but it may not be correct. Well, you pick 5 of these, but the question is, do you pick 1 through 5, or can you take any 5? I think it's 1 through 5. Makes more sense. And place them one at a time over a group. 1 has to go in each group, I believe. And the rest of the cards stay in your hand. Now, you have other cards, which is the action deck. The action deck is separated into these different kinds of cards, each of which has a special ability. For example, what do we have here? Assassination allows you to remove an influence card, one of these, if it's face up. Now, we'll see how they get turned face up in a little while. A spy allows you to look through your opponent's hand, take a card, and throw it in their discard pile. They get a replacement then. Egyptian castling allows, well, Egyptian Roman castling, it allows you to redistribute 2 of your groups, the influence cards you have on them, face down. I think they've got to be face down cards. Redistribute? No. So even face up ones get turned over. The scout allows you to flip up all the influence cards on one of your opponent's groups face up, so that now you can see what he's got. And that's kind of the advantage of face up versus face down. Face down cards, your opponent doesn't know what you have necessarily. Wrath of God, remove all influence cards from one group, both yours and your opponent's, and they're discarded. There doesn't have to be anything on, say, your group when you do this, but there has to be something on at least one group. Finally, the Cleopatra Caesar veto prevents an execution of an opponent's action card. Basically, you trump their action card, Both cards go into the discard pile, and then you get to draw a card. You can't veto a veto. Pretty simple. How's the play of the game? Well, on your turn, you're allowed to do the following. First, if you have an action card in your hand, and you don't start with one there, you can play one. You might have more than one in your hand. And it takes the effect listed. Then, you have two choices. You can either take an active turn or a passive turn. An active turn, you get to do things. A passive turn, you get to discard. I'm assuming an active turn right now. You must play one or two influence cards, and they go face down. Caesar on one side of the table, Cleopatra on the other, attached to one of the groups. Okay, after you play the cards, then you must draw cards to refill your hand. Those can come from one of two decks. They can come from your influence deck, which is all the cards like this, and some ones with P's on them, which are philosophers. We'll explain them in a moment. Or you can draw action cards. Now, the action cards, you get to stack the deck for them. At the beginning of the game, you get to set them up in whatever order you like. Alternatively, you can agree that they just get shuffled. That's suggested for a beginner game. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go. I kind of like the idea of stacking the deck. So I think I'm probably going to play with that. All right. Then you draw a vote of confidence card. And a vote of confidence will probably be one of these groups. If it's one of those groups, everybody flips up their influence on that group, and whoever has the highest influence gets a patrician from that group into their pile. And remember, you're trying to collect these possibly with some set collection ability here. Okay. Now, you can look at your own face-down influence cards, the ones that you've played. You may only have 5 cards on your side of one group. You can't go above that. You also may not play an influence card on a group so that there's more than 8 cards total from both sides. If you hit 8 cards, there's a special vote of confidence, which is handled, when is that handled? Prior to refilling hand, but after, I assume, the vote of confidence card is drawn. Okay. Oh no, refill hand comes before the vote of confidence. So, after you play your cards, if there's 8 or more on one of these, there's an immediate vote of confidence type action on there. And if you draw, after you refill your hand, and you must do this, you have to go up to 5 cards you can take from either deck you wish. Then you draw one of these, and you see whether or not the vote happens. If an orgy happens, there's no vote of confidence on that turn. It doesn't really do anything special. It just says, we're busy. There's one orgy card that has a reshuffle on it, and then you mix this entire pile. Normally, whatever cards you use over here, whatever of your own cards you use, they're gone. There may be, I don't think there's a way to get cards back either. I was thinking there might be an action, but I don't believe there is. All right. Also with the vote of confidence, there's a special card called the Philosopher. The way the Philosopher basically works is the guy with the lowest votes present in a pile wins one of the patricians. Okay. Now, what if we had 8 cards on the thing? It seems like, gee, that person's just going to start taking, the winner's going to just start taking all the cards. Well, that's not the case. As soon as there's any kind of vote of confidence, both players discard, I believe, their highest, oh no, I lied. The winning player discards his highest numbered influence card, the loser discards his lowest numbered influence card, as well, all philosophers are discarded. Now, philosophers are kind of like a reversal, right? You play one of them in your pile, and hopefully it's face down, because if it's face up, your opponent knows about this sneaky trick you've played. If it's face down, then they don't. Well, the number of philosophers is important. and who owns them. So if I've just got a Philosopher and my opponent does not, lowest card wins, or lowest total wins. On the other hand, if we each have a Philosopher, highest total wins, or if we each have two. And I think there's only two in the deck, if I have two Philosophers and my opponent has one, it goes lowest total first, wins. If I have two and my opponent has none, it goes lowest total first. So two is kind of a way of saying, oh yeah, even if you put one in here, and still guaranteeing lowest, unless you both put two in there. Okay. If you have no cards in your hand, or I guess that can happen, or you don't like your cards, you can discard up to 5 of them from your hand, and then you refill it with 5 new cards. You don't draw a vote of confidence. You don't do anything else. And play alternates between the two players. So the game ends when all the patricians have been won by someone, or both players are out of influence cards. They no longer have a deck, they no longer have cards in their hand. Or, if neither player can play on groups due to the player and total maximums, and the players don't have any cards to change that situation. I.e., if you're in a position where you physically cannot play, let's say you have 5 cards on your side of the table, but you don't have a way of triggering a vote of confidence other than by the cards, you can no longer play. And if both people are in that situation, the game is over. And at that point, you score. So if you're in a situation where you cannot play, either because you have no cards in your hand, or none at all, or the maximums have been reached for you in the groups that exist on the table, then you have to play passive. You can discard, you can not discard if you wish, whatever. Right? I don't think you're required to discard. Yeah, this is up there. What else is there? Once you're out of influence cards totally, you can no longer play, including action cards, so you've got to make sure you get your action cards out there. Trying to remember what happens. Ah, yes, when the last card out of a set goes in a vote of confidence. What happens? All influence cards on both sides go into the discard pile. So, yeah. If the last card was taken as a result of a drawn vote of confidence card, the player removes the vote of confidence card from the game. Yes. So a vote of confidence cards can get pulled. In that case, I don't know how big a deal that is, because those cards don't mean anything anymore. If you draw vote of confidence cards for that group, they get thrown into the box, and then you draw another one. Okay, so it's as though the deck's just depleted of that kind. That's it. After both people, after everybody is at a point where they cannot play anymore, after both players are there, then you count your scoring. And your scoring, like I said, 1 point per patrician, 1 point for having the majority of a group, and it's always an odd number, so that's easy enough to see. 1 point for all patricians in a group. Now, I'm assuming majority, and definitely all, are out of the total, not majority of those taken. It doesn't say that. Yeah. And then you also get 2 points for making your victory. All right, let's give it a try.